Hello, everyone. Welcome to the roundup here on Blood Bowl Live. Here to go through all of the week's fixtures from the ADBBL Season 8. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 games to go through, and then we will go through all of the playoffs, which have now been drawn, and we'll see what they look like as well. Here with me this week, as always, Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, good evening, sir.
Good evening. You all right?
Yes, good. Thank you. Good. And no Scott Bryant with us this week. Instead, we have I mean, to say, I was trying to think of a phrase to introduce John with. Jack of all teams, master of block, because I'm thinking the two teams he's won the league with both had a lot of block coming with them. All around, great coach and great guy, Mr. John Reeder. John, thank you very much for joining us this week.
Oh, my pleasure, and big shoes to fill. So, really looking forward to it.
Well, we're going to dive straight in because we've got loads of games to go through, and then we want to have a good look at the playoffs. So we will start with the Bleeding Clowns versus Boulder's Army, then a 3-0 victory for the Clowns, a much needed victory for them. Going into this game, they needed to get the 3 points to put them into a pretty much secure playoff spot in the top four. And 3 points is what they got. It seemed quite nervy in the first half. It went in 1-0 up at half time. Lots of fouls coming from from the Black Orcs and the Train Troll, so not necessarily coming where you thought they were going to come from, but a little bit tetchy and 1-0 at half time. Fungus then having a foul, which I'll cover before anyone else does. We know that the ball and chain isn't allowed to foul, but Leanne really wanted to do it, so Scott let it happen. But a comfortable 3-0 victory in the end. John, I mean, I'll come to you first. Scott's season kind of had a few up and down moments. We probably expected him to be second in the group or up in that top four, but he has kind of grabbed it at the very end.
Yeah, I think Scott has had some big results this season that have gone both for and against him. One in particular versus a cakey coach probably had him very much down in the dumps at one point. And if you look at his team, it looks like he started off with a very planned and methodical skill path and tree with what he was going to choose, and then maybe switched over to the more random skills a little bit later on. But for this game, it's an interesting game because there are not too many casualties, which I know both of the Khorne and of the Black Orc teams would really want to play into. That's their strengths. And a really high scoreline. But yeah, I think as the season has gone on, Leanne has really worked out the fouling game, and I'm sure she'll be back for next season with even more deadly ambitions.
I think having spoken to Leanne, I think we're not far off getting goblins on her list, and I feel like it would really suit her, based off the fact, especially she's fouling with like the orcs and the troll and the weapons. Like she's fouling with anything she can. I feel like a team where she can mess around with fouling and bribes and all that sort of stuff is absolutely for her. Tom, probably a result we expected in this one. This was Leanne's last. This was both these coaches' last games. Leanne is one of my favorite coaches to kind of hear what she does in games and see how games go about. I think she did scare Scott a little bit to start with, but the result maybe went the way we thought it would.
Yeah, I think it's always nice to see this when you have people who haven't played the game and they bring their own flavor to the game. The randomness. I don't think people who've played for a long time, you notice them because they get into a specific predictive pattern of knowing what the opposition is going to do. But when they come across someone like Leanne, where they're just there and they're just trying different things and just seeing what can happen, I think that's when kind of more seasoned players get a bit nervous around these people. So it sounds like it was a fun game, especially, yeah, like you say, on turn 6, seeing a trained troll foul. You know, that's just ridiculous. People are like going, it's a just ridiculous amount of kind of cost put a really good player, a really impactful player fouling, and you just take it out. Yeah.
The new players versus experienced players was a big topic of conversation at the tournament I attended at the weekend, and just the sheer unpredictability that can come from that. I think as you get more and more experienced into Blood Bowl, sometimes the blinkers come on, and you don't consider the incredible stretch plays. And at the end of the day, it's a dice game, and you roll a couple of sixes, and the impossible becomes possible, and a certain result just disappears. And sometimes these players who are new into Blood Bowl, and it's a difficult game to learn with a steep learning curve. Hey, roll the dice, see what you can get.
Absolutely. And see, Scott's in the chat. He said 3-0 is unfair in her. It was much closer. At 1-0, I managed to get away with a lucky move after about to go 1-1. Then a blitz, a double rush in last 2 turns for me, and a failed handoff by Leanne meant I got 3. In no way was it an easy beat. So it sounds like it was a good game on both sides.
Yeah, and I very much look forward to whatever Leanne brings into playoffs. I think it could be very interesting if she again, does some of this kind of stretch plays and maybe throw some people off. Could get a result. Well done to both coaches there. We will go on to our next game, which is these first 2 games aren't on the homepage, so I just need to find it. It is Dead Star Belgrave versus the Riotous Rams. A 1-1 draw, another very important fixture for deciding group standings here. Dave in need of a win to guarantee him a place in the top 4. Rich still with some games to play after this one. And a draw was music to the ears of everyone around them, with both of them dropping points, I think is probably the best way to put it. 2 coaches here with lots of experience, lots of success in this league and others and tournaments. A proper kind of heavyweight battle here, coming to a draw on the touchdowns, but absolutely the Rams getting the casualties that we're kind of used to seeing from them now. Tom, I think this was a very difficult one to call beforehand. The fact that it was very sunny, possibly not impacting too much of the decisions made on either team. But do you think sort of it looks like sort of touchdown wise, a very early score, a relatively quick equalizer, and then maybe just a bash fest until the end of the game?
Yeah, it looks like it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are these the 2 most played teams in the league? They seem I don't think I've seen Dave play anything other than Shambling Undead in league, and equally the same with Rich on the Riotous Rams. So I think
it's definitely season 3 for the Shambling Undead, and I think we're now on season 5 for the Rams. So yeah, been around a while now.
So they're both kind of maxed up with skills on either side. So yeah, it's an interesting one because I quickly looked through the 10 games, and I kind of think that this season has had the most weather changes that I've ever seen in Blood Bowl. Previous seasons have been just nice, but there's been a lot of weather changes. So it's nice to see a little bit of variation, especially when you've got these 2 teams playing. But as you say, potentially didn't really have much of an impact on them. Dave obviously just took a team mascot, but then very quickly in turn 3, by the looks of things, he had an injury of death on one of his zombie linemen. So equally, I think he got an injury. Actually, he got injury on one of Rich's Beastman runners. Unfortunately, it wasn't Nanny that didn't get injured. So Nanny seems to have kind of lives to see another day again on this one.
Having spoken to Dave a little bit over the weekend, I understand that there was a really impactful early turnover. And turnovers are so big within Blood Bowl, and being able to score on your opposition's drive normally leads to a really positive result. So I think it was a turn 2 or turn 3 score for Dave, and then Yeah, that super early. So I imagine a blitz or something similar occurred there. And then, of course, Nanny rolls in for the 1-1 at half time, leaving the undead to just grind down the pitch for the whole second half, looking for that turn 8 score. Now, while all this is going on, looking at the tour play record, it seems that there were a couple of deaths caused by the Chaos team onto the undead team. And regen is such a fantastic skill when it works, and when it doesn't work and you lose a couple of players, absolutely heartbreaking. So I think there was a skelly and a zombie that are now have been removed from the Dead Star team, and from what I understand, on that turn 16 attempt to score from Dave, there was maybe a handoff to a goal that failed and resulted in this 1-1 loss. But Chris, you're absolutely right when you said these are two heavyweight coaches. Rich, I think at one point was rated on Tour Players the third best Chaos coach in the UK, and Dave is up there with a star rating for the Undead. So a 1-1 draw, as you said. A few folks, possibly not too far from this podcast, were very happy to see that result.
Yes, I'm not even going to deny it. I was very happy to see this result, and very happy to kind of see that, yeah, some points lost on both sides here. I'm using new headphones today, and I just accidentally pressed them, and now I'm listening to music as well as listening to everything else. I need to figure out how to stop that, which I'll do in a second, because that's really distracting. Anyway, going to the next game, then we have got the Dark Elves versus the Righteous Rams. Rams in again. Dark Elves were being played this time by Simon was the stand-in for this game, and sweltering heat coming in here was going to be a big factor as soon as we saw it, knew that this would kind of have a kind of key impact. And then it was weird, this one, because I feel like it just suddenly changed. I don't know, John, how much attention you were paying to this as the game was going on, but 1 second I was looking at what seemed like a relatively drawn out kind of maybe sort of slow win for the Rams, and suddenly it's 2-1 to the Elves.
Well, I can neither confirm nor deny that I was paying a lot of attention to this game at work, and it was absolutely not up on my second monitor because I was concentrating on other things. But for all of the coaches that are coming in and picking up a brand new team as a standing coach for the first time, it's a really difficult thing to do. It's fantastic that you're out there getting experience with new teams that's going to possibly stand you in good stead later on, and maybe it'll guide you to or away from a team. But it is a really difficult thing to do. So to come away with a 2-1 win over such a highly rated coach, I think for the Dark Elves was a big result. I don't know whether the sweltering heat and and what the results were there, and how many players went off for the second half, and then with the skill progression on the Dark Elf team having chosen a lot of sure feet for the guaranteed higher not guaranteed, but likely higher mobility, whether any gaps that opened up could then be exploited, and maybe that led to the unexpected result.
It's Dark Elves. I was thinking about this the other day and speaking to some people about this, Tom. I don't know whether Dark Elves are a very, very good sort of where they sit with regards to a team, if you need to just kind of pick a team up to go with, because they've got Edge 2, so you've got a lot of options there with some relatively easy rolls. They've got Armor 9, so as far as elves go, they're pretty sturdy. You've got an interesting mix of positionals in there to try a few things. Are they almost the perfect team to be like, you've just got to pick up and play these guys? Are they one of the best options to have there?
I suppose, because equally you've got a number of block in there as well with the blitzers as well, because you've got the built-in block. So as a starter team, yeah, I think they'd be quite good, quite fun, because you've got the movement there as well, so you can literally go from side to side. Edge just means it kind of you eliminate effectively. Just don't roll a 1, so not a team for me really. But apart from that, no, they look like a good team, and I think a number of people have played them and had a good fun with them. So I'm wondering whether we may see them in a future season, quite a few more Dark Elf teams.
I think we will see. Gut tells me we will see a couple of Dark Elf teams. I know a few of the people who have been stand-ins have really enjoyed picking them up to play them. So I think we could see them kind of coming in and having an impact. We will we'll skip on from this game just because the Rams. We've got one more game with the Rams coming up. But just a quick note. I think this is the last. This is definitely the last Dark Elf game that we have to cover. So just a quick thank you to everyone who did play as a stand-in, because one of the most important things I think is that you come into the league expecting to play a certain number of games. We want to kind of try and make that happen as much as possible and kind of try and make sure you do get those games in. So really appreciate everyone who's kind of given up some time to be a stand-in and make sure that other coaches get the games in that they were expecting. So thank you very much, anyone who did that. We will move on then to an interesting game in the ABC, Knuffle Dusters versus Sir Honkington's Folly. Interesting game, this one, in the sense that both coaches going into this game had idle hopes of top four, but Dave, a win here was less important than the Gnomes, and a 1-1 draw coming out of this one. Many trees coming from the many blocks and casualties coming from the Gnome side in this case. A result that, probably looking back on it, John, was really, really important for both teams, because one has just missed out on top four and one has just missed out on 5 to 8. So this result turned out was pretty key.
Looking through the tour play record for this result, the first thing that leapt off from the page was the fact that a woodland fox has managed to badly injure a Norse Raider lineman.
Incredible start.
I mean, turn one. I'm not quite sure of the how we possibly came to that point, but what an absolutely brilliant play, and what a wonderful, unexpected result that would have been. But yeah, there's a very scary looking treeman on this gnome team, and I think from what we've seen in the gnome teams is that they're a little bit easier to pilot and coach in a tournament setting when you get a large pack of skills applied from the initial game, and a little bit more difficult to coach from a league team when you start with a load of vanilla players. It looks like the results for the Gnomes have got progressively better as the season went on, as the skills have been added, with various players getting dodge and the treeman getting, I think, block and a couple of other skills in there. But back to that fox casualty on turn one. It's actually not the first one of the season for that particular player, so a really interesting way to play that, and a couple of really difficult stat busts on the Norse team. I guess led to the 1-1 result, but would have been a wonderful game to have been present into the shop and watched.
It was it was a very interesting result this, Tom, because it not only took points away from both teams, it's also taken a number of players and a skilled up Valkyrie, in particular, away from the Norse, going into a much more an equally as an important game afterwards. So this was the Gnomes' last game. They did as much as they could to kind of get their position in the group. Dave then going weakened into his last game would have been painful.
Yeah, and as much as we were talking about people joining and new to the game, I'm learning more and more about this whole game as well, because clearly, St Honkington's Folly, it's their second season, and having that patience with a team to slowly build up the SPP to get the actual skills that you need, and to take on board what John's just said, that's been, waiting in the wings effectively to get to that level so that they are doing this amount of damage. It's great to see. It's great to see just the difference of how people play the game and what skills and what kind of ways of thinking about the game is.
It's a really high valued gnome team as well, like, because you're not used to seeing the stunty teams get quite so kind of up there with the team value goes. And I always kind of, in my head, I'm always comparing gnomes to halflings, and I don't think I've ever seen a halfling team sort of in a league with 1.2 million value. So it's an interesting one to think, because you're almost, most of the time, I'd say most of the time, you're kind of not as worried about inducements because the team value is so high, but actually there's some quite good low value star players available to those gnomes, and the team values this season just seem to be skyrocketing through the roof because we've got so many around the 1.4, 1.5s, we've had 1.6s. It's kind of a 1.2 suddenly does feel a bit low.
Yeah. Because the nest,
yeah,
for example, his tree man, that's an immense one now. It's at 190k, and it's got block, grab, and juggernaut now as the skills. So, and if you actually look down the SPP, he's holding on to those. He's not randomizing everything, playing the long game. We've got Cub Bold, who obviously gave that Norseman rabies straight off the bat, has got SPP 7. So he's not. He's obviously building up to get something on that player.
Yeah, and that tree with block and grab, it becomes so much more threatening because you can probably work the 3 dice blocks in, bring the mighty blow in as a removal, and then if you don't get the removal you need, well, you're staying near me, son. There's no getting away. If you do manage to stand up next turn, it's at best case a dodge away, and then the juggernaut is a maybe a little bit of an interesting choice, if I heard there correctly, Tom. With
yeah, it was randomized though.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a disappointment there then.
Yeah.
It's worth noting as well, when you look at the players that this coach has gone through, that is not his first fox by any means. He had a strength stat busted but movement increase fox, which is sadly gone. He's had fantastic Mr. Fox, he's had mediocre Mr. Fox, and we're now on okay Mr. Fox. So he's churning through players, but he's done a great job, I think, with that team. I think unlucky maybe not to get into the 5 to 8 bracket. We will move on then. Sorry, John, go ahead.
I wonder if that will be a team that gets redrafted next season. It could be a really interesting one.
I think it is their second season at the minute, so maybe we'll see whether we get a third. A season, Gnomes starting a season with lots of block linemen could be really interesting to see. On to our next game then, and we have got the Suffolk Suckers versus the Buffalo Biggins. Some big score lines this week. A 3-0 win for the Vampires here. This was another sort of key game in deciding the group. Harrison very much needing a win here, but unfortunately Andy on a very impressive run, I have to say, a very impressive run of results. And on Andy had Tom, I'll come to you first on this. Andy, we talked about him last week because he had a run of 3 games that he had to get through in his last 2 weeks. He had to play myself, he had to play Rich, and he had to play Harrison. And I think the general kind of opinion was maybe that was going to be quite challenging for him. And he has walked through that's results unscathed himself with some very impressive results, some very impressive play, and come out of it, comfortably in that 5 to 8 space, possibly feeling unlucky that a result going his way earlier in the season, and he feels worthy of top 4. A really, really impressive run.
Yeah, absolutely. This season has definitely been a season for vampires. You know, yourself, John, and both just doing amazing with these teams. Very quick to score both times straight off the bat. You know, turn 2, turn 4, and then even turn 13 as well. So it's been very, very quick and easy by the looks of things for these vampires. Clearly, a bit like the gnomes. When these teams first come out, people are a bit unsure, don't really know all of it, but then you start to learn the little tricks. Hypno gaze. I love hypno gaze. I wish that was a skill that was on more players or was available to more players, because I think that would add in a much more fun element. Yeah, I'm really pleased as a retired vampire coach myself to see him.
John, you are normally Tom is our resident vampire expert, but I feel like I probably have to call you our current resident vampire expert. What are your kind of thoughts on his team here? Because he's only just hired the Blitzer. He was running with 4 vampires and Vargeist for most of the season. That Blitz is pretty new to his roster. And very different to yours, which is then much more of the kind of positional heavy and no Vargeist. So what's your thoughts?
So I spoke to Andy at the end of last season for me when he was considering taking the vampires. I think this is the first season for him, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And we had a long conversation about whether to take the Vargeist or whether to take the Blitz or whether to take both. And having already run 2 seasons with the vampires, at that point, I had terrific success in my first season with the Vargeist. It had got a few early casualties. It had got Mighty Blow early on, and it just exploded off from there. And then I brought it to the A&D season, and it was absolutely abysmal and did nothing all season apart from knock itself out and cause turnovers and eat thralls and really caused me no end of trouble. And so I've gone from being in love with the Vargeist to being adamantly against the Vargeist. And I offered a little bit of advice to Andy to maybe go that way, but he made his own choice, and there's no right or wrong choice. If you get the skills early on, it's maybe the best star player in the game, and if you don't, it maybe drags your team down. And I think with only 2 casualties in the season, probably Andy fell into the same trap that I did. But I would say that as to compared to my first season as a vampire coach at A&D, I think that Andy's actually done better than me. And the skills that he's starting to add to the throwers and to the runners are really building into a terrifying team. And should he choose to redraft this, it's going to be a very difficult next season for us all.
So what's the secret sauce with vampires? Would you put it down to the hypnogaze, or would it be more around their stats of strength 4s and agility 2s?
Tom's just asking for a friend.
Yeah, you're a friend. Go ahead.
For me, it's the Blitzer. Possibly the piece that I'll rephrase. On defense, it's the Blitzer, maybe the piece that I most underrated earlier on with my coaching experience with the Vampires. As soon as you can get a couple of skills onto that piece, it becomes an absolute game changer. And then on offense, again, on my first season, I was like, it was the speed with the runners. I don't think as a vampire coach you want to have the possession of the ball for a long drive. There are too many pieces that need to move too often on a roll of a 1+, otherwise they self-destruct. If you've got the ball, get it to a runner, score, and get back onto the defense again. So that's the secret sauce for me. Score quickly, and then use the blitzers and others on defense with the mass hypnogaze.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. There you go.
Well done to Andy. I think a really impressive run for his season. On Harrison's as well. I do feel for Harrison because I think that there's another game to come of his later. I think sometimes Harrison gets very good runs of luck, and then sometimes he gets very awful runs of luck. And the season didn't start too badly for him. And looking at previous seasons, he's had good runs. He was third place with this team only a couple of seasons ago, and then this season he's just met a really unlucky. He's had a really unlucky run. He's had a lot of kind of draws in there, and uh, I feel like has possibly been unlucky with the dice. So whenever I talk to people, it's that Harrison just every now and again will have one role that makes him implode, and it can be so tough. But a really good attitude, and I think he's still got some really good players here to put him in a good stead in playoffs, and. I know that we won't see this team next season, so I really hope they get a good playoff run together. We'll cover the big uns more in a little bit as we've got another one of their games to go through. But we will jump over to the World's Edge Berserkers versus Odin's Ravens. This was a admin game because we had a stand-in for JD, who was unable to continue with the league. Mr. Scott Norman very kindly stepped in on this occasion, and you can tell that it was Scott Norman that stepped in because I think one of the first things that we were aware of was some shenanigans with a beer ball, the only stunty player on the Norse team, and I think that probably comes as a surprise to no one. John, you won the league with dwarfs. You've also beaten dwarfs in a final, so probably the best person to ask about dwarfs. Jamie has only ever played this team. I feel only ever will play this team, and has built a very good roster here with a lot of mighty blow, a lot of guard, a lot of quite scary looking dwarfs.
He's built an absolutely terrifying roster. That I would in no way like to meet under any circumstances with any other team. With the amount of mighty blow in there, I really would be fearful for any players that I valued and wanted to see continuing on with the team. One of the things with the dwarf team is that a natural dwarf result is typically 1-1. They're really hard to stop scoring on their drive, and then as soon as the opposition have their drive, if they have any sort of mobility and the positioning is just a little bit off, or a blitz can see something through, or maybe a double skulls or something opens up a gap, as soon as the positioning isn't 100%, which is impossible to do, and someone can get around your team and move you around, you naturally then concede the touchdown. And so 1-1 is the normal dwarf score that you would typically see. So obviously in this game, and a little bit hard to tell because of the way that the game had been adminned and you can't read it from tour play, great defense to not concede the touchdown and then go in and win. So really well done. And if Jamie ever does feel like playing another team, dwarfs can be a great start if you want to learn how to do things positionally and have players in the right spots.
So Scott is in the chat who piloted this Norse team. Says never let a goblin coach pilot your Norse. First turn pile driver sent off for the Yeti straight away. Jamie's dwarfs just hit you hard. Every pow is normally an armor break. Valkyries didn't do what they should 1-1 on each pass handoff to each other. So maybe some unfortunate dice rolls and some fun to be had there. I'm sure there was some shenanigans with the pig, and I can't immediately remember what they were. So I'm hoping Scott will tell me what that was. On JD, then Tom, he sadly wasn't able to commit to the rest of the season. But his Norse team, it's a redrafted Norse team. He's got kind of an interesting array of skills here. Some really kind of passing heavy Valkyries in this team, which possibly not. They come with these passing skills and pass and catch, but I never feel like I see them doing massive amounts of it. But he's got sort of Cannoneer running past Cloudburster, accurate and on the ball over the two of them. It's an interesting build for the Norse.
Yeah, because you haven't really got very much to receive these passes, really, have you? Unfortunately, because edge 3s and 4s are across the board. So you really need to have someone with catch or something just to give you that extra kind of confidence on it. Yeah, it's been some very random skills on a lot of these. And again, I find this with my team, that you start to find that certain players just tend to rack up the SPP, either on purpose or just they're the player in the right place at the right time and getting the right hits. So it's an interesting lineup with a lot of these kind of skills. I don't know. Pile Driver was randomized on the Yeti. And I hear a lot of people saying that the Yeti is very similar to the Vargeist and the Vampire team. If it's the right, if it plays well on the day, it's fantastic. If it starts rolling ones, it's pointless. So yeah, interesting team.
Well, speaking of Yetis, then going on to our next game, which is the Gilded Knights of Cerulean versus the Knuffle Dusters, a very key game for both coaches. One of these coaches was going to go into the top 4, and it was just a case of who. Phil only needed the draw. Dave needed the win. And the first thing Dave did in this game was sack the Yeti so that he could immediately take Morg and Lord Borak into this game. John, I mean, it's a kind of interesting Hail Mary tactic to throw everything into those star players, but they did a job for him in this game.
Well, the first thing I will say is thank you very much to Dave. I may owe you a beer or 3 for the removals here going into the next fixture. So top marks. But yeah, Mighty Blow +2 on Morg, Dirty Player +2 on Lord Borak is absolutely terrifying. And if you get lucky with the foul rolls, and I think we saw a lot of early fouls in this game. With fouls on turn 2, 3, and 4, all Kazing players, and then with Morg at a death at the end of the first half. Quite how Phil managed to hang on for a 1-1 here is pretty amazing. But I think at some point here there's been a really interesting design choice from Dave, because he has kept the TV on this Norse team really low and really efficient. And then with the variety of star players that are available to Norse, and being able to bring those in as a different tool to suit the opposition, such a great thing to do. And I think Phil maybe didn't escape too badly, having just faced Morg myself versus on my last A&D game of the real season, and suffered 8 casualties in a game. To have 2 of them playing you, maybe 5 casualties wasn't too bad at all.
Before I forget, the shenanigans with the pig is what Scott refers to as the snuffle shuffle, and that's where you just land the pig on the ball to bounce the ball forward because they've got no hands. Sounds incredible. Anyway, yeah, I think you're right. I think Phil maybe has almost got off lightly with that kind of that setup. Looking at Dave's roster, Tom, he's done he's done almost all randoming except for dodge that he's put on 1 Valkyrie. John, like you said, he's just got all Furness and the Valkyries. He's now got rid of the Yeti. But Tom, as far as the skills he's kind of now got a wide range of kind of different utility linemen here, all that come with block already and thick skull. Frenzy, Fend, a couple of strip balls, Sure Feet, Dauntless, and Pro. Like he's kind of got lots of kind of odd bit utility players that can kind of plug gaps in his team and do what he needs them to. It's an interesting kind of collection.
Yeah, like you say, it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife of a team, really. So he can do both defense and offense at the same time, almost on this one. Just picking up on what's going on in the chat, looking at the actual timeline for this particular game, I don't even know if did the Norse team actually show up, because it just looks like there's just two superstars just playing the game here, because it's a bit of a kicker that the most valued player was a Norse lineman at the end of it, reading through it. So
you do feel like Morgor Borak deserved it more.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I think Borak should have done, because the amount of fouling he did was phenomenal. And just to pick up on what John was saying, I've only just noticed the volume of star players that Norse can actually have, because obviously they have both Old World Classic and Favoured Off, don't they? That they can do.
I think you make a choice at the
You have
start
to
of
make
the
a
season
choice,
of
right?
one of the two. But yeah, it's so many players.
Yeah. So you couldn't then effectively have Deep Root and Lord Borak as well, because that'd just be horrific. Yeah. Cool.
Looking at Phil's team, like you said, John, he's missing a couple of key players for those playoffs, but he's still got some good kind of key offensive players in the Corngors. Greninja looking particularly terrifying. Horns, block, tackle, very long legs, mighty blow, and more SPP sort of queuing up there. So a very good team built for this Corn one. Interesting to see what you both think, because we've got a lot of Corn teams in this season. And I'm always trying to get someone to commit to which one they think is kind of top of the list. I think the Clowns have got some very interesting skills. James's team absolutely looks incredible. Where does this Corn team sit, sort of, with all of the ones that we've got? Has he kind of built one of the kind of best ones here?
Is this a redraft? Is this the only redrafted Corn team?
This is, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nicely developed skill package that works really well together. There's lots of block, which then makes the frenzy blocking that much more effective. It's supported by a good number of rerolls, and he's got that all-important removal piece with I think it's the Mighty Blow and the tackle, which is just such a key thing. A couple of early removals in a lot of games can swing a game dramatically, because then you can just overmatch in any area of the pitch that you want to choose. I think that Phil gets the right results and maybe some slightly above average dice on any kickoff. His next opponent could be in real trouble.
Well said from his next opponent. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, this, like you say, there's some very, very good teams, but this one is immense. I played it. Unfortunately, I wasn't as lucky as John. I had the full ensemble of players there ready, and even when I took Deep Root, that block, claws, horns, Bloodseeker just took him apart and just took him out of the game. He plays in a particular way, in a particular style, and which really suits Corn. He likes the frenzy. He likes to really get stuck in and make paths through on the pitch to score. So yeah, heads up.
Do we know if the Apothecary came into play here and saved a player for Phil? With a couple of stat buffs mixed next games, I wonder if it was out there and saved somebody else.
I know that he had used one. I remember in the chat that someone commented that one had been used quite quickly. I'm not sure whether both were used. Phil, if you're in the chat, please let us know.
I think he did use one, and then
got used early on, I'm being told.
Yeah.
Oh boy, so there was more than one. Wow.
Yeah, because he had his standard one, and then he took the Wandering Apothecary as well. So he had two, which it sounds like both got burnt quite quickly. So yeah, well to survive. Well played to both these coaches. And also a little shout out to Dave quickly, because Dave had one game that wasn't going to be played, and Dave did not want to he made it clear that he wanted that game to be admin as a draw, because if it had been admin any other way, he could have taken that spot from Phil, regardless. And he made it clear he didn't want to go through in that fashion. So a good kind of sportsman from him and from JD as well, to kind of make sure that people sort of went through on the results. So yeah, well done to them. On to the next fixture then, the Riotous Rams versus the Jaffa Cakes, a fixture that contributed towards we can confirm the crowning of the Stunty Cup to the Jaffa Cakes, and I have been told that I must refer to them as their full name. Just a fantastical failed attempt, can't actually keep expecting success. A huge well done to Scott for this team. I mean, it's I don't know. I was really. I'll be very honest. I was so skeptical about this team, and I was borderline. Should something this chaotic even be allowed? And I've been absolutely converted to the fact that this is just an incredible team, and the way that Scott plays them. And I think also, John, I'll come to you first on this, because I know that you have played and had some success with Snotlings. It's the thing that gets me the most about this team is that Scott goes into every game not knowing what, he doesn't prepare beforehand. He doesn't know what he's going to have at his disposal. So he has no time to prepare, but he's got some really, really strong results against some strong opponents this season. It's an incredible job.
I just don't know how to describe the Jaffa Cakes. Amazing, unique, bonkers. Scott is just out there plodding his own path here for the joy of the game. And, these have been probably one of my favorite games to play, my favorite games to watch. The randomness of allowing your opposition to select their own doom or glory through the bingo wheel is something just special, and the design space here to go and make a unique set of inducements and completely change the style of the play for every game is brilliant.
It's been great to watch, Tom, and I think we also you can't. He's got some really good results. It's a very difficult team to prepare to play against if you're not the Snotling coach. It's very difficult to you don't know what you're going to expect as much as he doesn't know what he's going to be bringing. And Rich has done a good job here in getting an awful lot of casualties, but Scott has just sort of played his game, and it's worked.
Yeah, this was on the pitch next to me, and to add to the randomness, even the weather was getting a show in as well. Starting off as nice, and then straight on the first kickoff, turning into a blizzard for the first half up until turn 5, and then turn into pouring rain. So it was clearly proper Suffolk weather happening there on that side of things. The other kind of crazy thing was that you say that Rich was getting like the kind of injuries and stuff. Really took a lot of times to try and actually get something off the pitch. Those Snotlings were just bouncing all over the place. It was something to see. It really was. And equally, the final kind of thing for me was that Black Gobbo. He's an interesting, tricky star player. Scott played him very well, and just sneaking him around and causing upset wherever he went.
I believe he wanted to throw the Black Gobbo, but it was then established that the Black Gobbo didn't have right stuff.
Yeah.
But as we've learned, Bomber does have right stuff, which I know he was also on the pitch. Scott is in the chat. Black Gobbo and Bomber were a great choice from Rich. Always had a stab option, always had a bomb option. Pouring Rain was a joy. Surround the ball with Snots. Halfling Chef stole the rerolls, made it 6+ for Rich to even secure the ball. KO'd Nanny twice. I tried, she just wouldn't die. This is Rich's last game of the group stage that was played, and look at kind of the draw that Rich had. There were a lot of tough games in there. He got a lot of kind of grinding draws against some strong opponents who have had very good seasons. I think you've got to look, John, you've got to look at Nanny and kind of what he's achieved with Nanny over, I think, 5 seasons now. I'm not recalling a player that I've seen this level of these kind of stats for that has lasted this long and remained in the game. I mean, movement 7, edge 2, horns, block, mighty blow, tackle, claws, a legend of a player. I've not seen anything quite like it.
Just amazing. And we've all known about Nanny now for a couple of seasons. We've all understood his threat. We've all known he's the key, one of the 2 key removal pieces on that team. And being able to get Nanny off is such a big thing. So many coaches have wanted nothing more when playing the Riotous Rams, possibly even more than winning, to kill that damn star player. And we've all failed. And I failed a couple of seasons ago with what was at the time the reigning champion Norse team, and Rich is so good about using Nanny to come out of cover, blitz, go back into cover with hopefully a removal, and protect him and score with him. A marvelous player, a great mix of skills, and well, I wonder whether we'll ever see him again.
And the final point on that is Nanny's sitting on 129 SPP as well. How on earth can you get that amount of SPP and not put extra skills or stats on that character?
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's been really interesting to see Rich stick with this team to get Nanny to superstar, to that kind of legend level. I think Nanny deserves it. Only the second player in ADBBL history to reach the level of legend, and yeah, it will be sad to see Nanny go if we don't see Nanny back again in a future season. So. Maybe we'll have to make sure they come back as a selectable star player or mercenary or something like that to cause some continued chaos going forward. John's not on board with that. We will go on to our penultimate game then. Which is this one here. It is the Wolverhampton Shamblers versus Boulders Bowlers. A 2-0 victory for the Shamblers. A very key game here. Jane needed the win in order to make it to the second playoff. And the Jaffa Cakes needed the win in order to knock the Gnomes out of the second playoff to secure the title of Stunty Cup. So a result that went the way of both those coaches wanted it to. 2-0 victory for the Necromantic Horror side. John, your Necro team did feature this season briefly as a stand-in team run by your son, so it was good to see them back. Jane's is persevered with this team and found a team that I think works for what she wants. Every now and again, the chaotic side of Jane comes out where she tries to do 6-up passes between the werewolves, but she's kind of found a way to play this team that seems to kind of suit what she wants to do.
Yeah, the Necro is such an interesting team to play with, such unique players in there. The Flesh Golems, once you can get block on them, they're just horrible pieces to play against with the block. Stand firm, armor of 10, thick skull, regeneration. They just won't go away when you play against them. They can really just block up any channels. And then there's damn bed sheets with the sidestep, and you get guard onto them, and the foul appearance which kicks in when you least like it. And then you have the wolves and the ghouls running around the back line. I can see why Jane really loves this team and has stuck with them for so long. And I think there's a couple of really skilled up werewolves in here, and what a fantastic team, and what a joy to play.
Yeah, Tom, looking at the werewolves, the one in particular, wrestle, tackle, jump up, and dodge, all chosen skills, makes it a very good offensive and defensive piece there. You can go and get the ball off someone. You're hunting any dodge players. You're not too concerned about your movement. You jump up and it's a really good combination, a very carefully selected group of skills to make that werewolf able to kind of do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and the best thing is that Jane just has fun with this team. She really enjoys it, and you're quite right. She's built this team around the way that she likes to play. That werewolf, yeah, that's a threat if ever there was one. But as John's quite rightly mentioned, there's so many different varieties of gameplay on this team. I've played Necromantic Horror in a couple of tournaments, and they are just fun because you can just move around and be everywhere and anywhere on the pitch at once. She's also, interestingly, skilled up a couple of zombie linemen, which is an interesting thing because I do not notice that a number of people do kind of focus more around the positional players and forget the linemen to skill them up and just think that they're just, meat for the meat grinder sort of thing. So she's got a really nice zombie lineman there with dirty player and kick on the team to add a bit of spice and variety into her matches.
I played a friendly against her on Sunday, and the stand firm block zombie lineman was very, very frustrating. When I wanted to kind of punch a hole or kind of control the pitch as much as I could, not being able to get it down with block, and then also not being able to move it around, make you a very, very frustrating player to play against. On the Boulders Bowlers and on Owen's Corn team here. It hasn't maybe had the opportunity to skill it up quite as much as he would have liked to this season. A really nicely painted team. If you get the chance to see it, it looks really, really nice with the blue and orange. A very nice team. Corn are. I'm interested to see what you guys think about how easy Corn are as a kind of first team to pick up, because they're quite simple with regards to remembering what skills you've got. It's mainly frenzy everywhere with horns on a few places and juggernaut on a few places, all of that. But are they kind of an easy first team because they can kind of be quite chaotic with the frenzy and moving yourself around the pitch and remembering all of those additional blocks? What do you think?
No. I've often looked at the Corn team and thought these look like really good fun to play, and I thought, oh my goodness, this frenzy is just going to give me a headache for the whole season. And especially when they start off with a limited amount of block and probably a low number of rerolls and the frenzy traps and the bad positioning that you can leave your players in, it's not the easiest spot to start your coaching career.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've never played as them, but I've played against them, and I've noticed where some people will do it and then go, "Oh, I've got frenzy on that piece," where they and then realise that they've now made a gap. And if they go off in two different directions, then they've made a nice kind of channel for you to run through. So it's one of those ones. Equally, I do find that the linemen with only armor 8 are a bit soft as well. So they can be isolated quite quickly.
A really tough draw for Owen as well, but I think we say it quite a lot that the tough draws are the kind of the ones you learn from a lot. He's played James, Tom, Elliot. In James, Tom, and Elliot, he's played 3 former champions just this season in the group stage. And actually, when you take into account this is his first season and you look at those results, they're not walkovers by any stretch of the imagination. He's been scoring touchdowns, he's been getting casualties. So absolutely going for it. So well done to Owen on a great season. We will go on to the last game then. The Admin 1-0 win for the Top Hat Society versus the Buffalo Biggins, played by our very own Mr. Tom Hovell here. A game that was run manually off Tourplay. If you look on Tourplay, you'll notice that you can't see the touchdown, and that is because the star player scored the touchdown, and when you admin the game, you can't add the star player in, so that just makes it a bit difficult to do. So that's why you'll notice that the touchdown isn't showing here. But a 1-0 victory for the Chaos Dwarf team. Tom, is it frustrating that one of your best games has come not for your team?
I want to see if I can swap humans for Chaos Dwarfs if possible, if that's all right. Can I swap them over? Now I'm in the player. Yeah. So this was a really interesting one because I'd never played Chaos Dwarfs and Harrison had never played against Chaos Dwarfs. But we'd both played against and played orcs. So it was one of those scenarios. I was very kindly given 330 petty cash. So straight away I took Thwack the Unstoppable, which basically effectively made maybe win the game. So first half, I chose to kick. I chose to kick to Harrison, and that was really good because he took about 3 or 4 turns to try and pick the ball up, which then gave me some time to react. Straight away on turn 1, my turn, after he kind of just pushed a few players around, I was very fortunate enough to be able to injure his top big and blocker. So on my first turn, I took out a Mighty Blow block pro big and blocker with a Chaos Dwarf by ganging up on them with Hobgoblins. Hobgoblins are really, really annoying. They're just a bigger form of a Snotling because none of them were going down. He was knocking them over, but they just weren't getting any injuries. He got 1 square away from touchdown, and I ran down a Thwack, the Unstoppable, on turn 8. My turn 7. Sorry, my turn 7. So he would have had his turn 8, and managed to knock him out with the ball. So Thwack the Unstoppable actually stopped me going down 1-0. Second half, he kicked to me. I had Thwack the Unstoppable. I got a high kick. So I basically put Thwack the Unstoppable, and the ball was landing on the line. So I put Thwack the Unstoppable on the line, and actually caught the ball on a 6 to start the second half. So to give it dues, it was more of luck than judgment. Harrison kind of unfortunately gave me the win because at that point, he Thwack the Unstoppable, because of his skill, which is unstoppable momentum, he's just brutal. So his special skill means that you can re-roll a single block dice on any of your blitzes. So every blitz you can re-roll at least a single one, and he's strength 6.
Every turn.
Yeah, every time he blitzes. So you basically have him blitz every turn. So that's what I was doing. so yeah, and that was causing absolute chaos. Equally, the fact was that the Chaos Dwarfs, although very slow, because they've got Ironhard skin, all his Mighty Blow was just irrelevant, just wasn't having an impact, and also Thick Skull as well. So he caused, I think he caused a couple of knockouts, but no real injuries, apart from right at the end with just 1 injury on a Chaos blocker. But really fun game, really interesting considering I'd never played them. I was surprised he didn't target the Hobgoblins as much, but because you try and keep quite a central play, and because it was going against orcs, so there wasn't really much agile abilities. It was kind of a very kind of push and pull, and then just break away with 1 or 2 key players on the side. I would suspect there would be a completely different turnout if Chaos Dwarfs were playing against something a bit more agile like elves.
On the orcs, then let's look at Harrison's team and kind of how this looks for playoffs. John, a big blow to be missing that big and blocker with all of the skills, kind of one of the 2-star players of the team. Still got that movement 7 blitzer with dodge, tackle, mighty blow, and strip ball. So still a good threat there, but not many skilled players within this orc roster.
Halfway through the season, I had a little look at all of the other teams in my division, and this was the team that I think I wanted to avoid the most. the lineup of blitzers and the amount of mighty blow and tackle that he has here for removals, particularly against the lightly armored thralls on my team, was absolutely terrifying. And so this was the one I wanted to avoid. And I think the coach has done a really good job at skilling those up. It is interesting that the big and blockers haven't gained as many skills, so I wonder if there's been a few casualties as we've gone through the season that have caused maybe some rehires. I have to admit I haven't been following it that closely. And then I also noticed there isn't a thrower on here, which I think possibly could be required for those stretch plays when you maybe have your 1-1, you've got 4 turns left in a half, and you've just got to get the ball over the line. That thrower might be maybe a little bit of a luxury player, but something that could be added to the roster here. But it's a big one, the big and blocker with block and mighty blow being out for the next game for sure, especially with that pro skill, which allows you to just go fishing on a push to see if you can change one of the pushes into something more advantageous.
Looking at the retired players, it doesn't look like a throw has ever been in this roster, interestingly, and I think this is the 3rd season with this team. So, there's some treasury there. So it'll be interesting to see whether Harrison spends any of that and how he does before his playoff game. And I believe, and I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, please, Harrison, tell me. But I believe Harrison is off to see the world after this season, and I've made no silence of the fact he's one of my favorite coaches in our league. I'm always looking for his results and rooting for him. I think he plays with such a great attitude towards the game and towards enjoying it and rolling with anything that goes wrong. So will absolutely be missed in future seasons for sure. That's all our games. So let's have a quick look at how the table's finished, and then we will fly through and have a little look at some of the playoffs. So the ABBC Atomic Cherry Bombs were sat at the top of that group for a lot of the season and stayed there. Numpty's coming in second, Chaos Storm third, and the Gilded Knights of Cerulean taking that 4th spot right in the last week. Jamie with his dwarves, along with the Rustbay Riptides, Knuckle Dusters, and Wolverswamps and Shamblers, round out the next bracket. So Honkington's Folly just lost out on that 5-8. Lavender Lynxes and Argarth and Mewers spent a lot of the season games in quite quickly, looking over their shoulder, but retained 9-12, along with Tom in that 9-12 spot for the Crusaders. And we had 2 teams who have stepped down: the Washington Deadskins and Odin's Ravens. So just the Hillbilly Howlers and Boulder's Bowlers going through to the playoffs in the bottom playoff. Looking at the MBBC, then John got that top of the table spot and then just chose not to leave it, with a little help from everyone behind him tripping themselves over as the season went on. So a healthy gap there at the top. Bleeding Clowns, Bitey Ducks, and the Orphic Gladiators finished their games very early, sat on 15 points, waiting to be overtaken, and it just never happened. So well done to Luke for securing 4th spot there. And then a lot of teams who just missed out: Dead Star, Belgrave, Suffolk Suckers, Jaffa Cakes, all just 1 point away from that top 4. Plague Brigade coming in 8th place. T-Belly Trudgers, Righteous Rams, Buffalo Biggins, and the Wildermere Wasps make up that next bracket, because the Dark Elves and the Top Hat Society will not be going through, which leaves just the Inglorious Bastards and Baldur's Army going into the bottom bracket. So here are what the playoffs look like then. We'll start at the bottom. Hillbilly Howlers versus Baldur's Army, and Inglorious Bastards versus Baldur's Bowlers. Just the 4 of them, and we did offer them whether they wanted a knockout or a little round robin group, and they wanted to play some knockout Blood Bowl, so why would we stop them? An interesting draw here. Some quite fighty teams in this bottom group. How do we think, do we think this is the opportunity, with kind of the chaos of knockouts and the kind of the higher risk, maybe the risks you need to take? Is this the opportunity for Leanne and for Owen to to grab a win and do an upset and get through to the final.
Yeah, so just looking at the one with Boulder's Army versus Hillbilly Howlers, the fact that Leanne has the excellent skill on dirty play, I hope she continues that front on there. Plus the fact that she's got 130 in the petty cash side. This looks like that should be in fact, both games should be quite fun to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, the change in format, the knockout, the possibility of extra time, the people maybe that were trying to protect players in the league now taking risks with those players. Let's see what happens.
It'll be really fun to see this one play out. I think they're going to be. I think there's going to be 4 really fun games played in that one. It'll be really interesting to see how that one moves forward. The second playoff bracket, then we have so Honkies Folly versus Wildermere Wasps, Lavender Lynxes versus Clueless Crusaders, T-Belly Trudgers versus Buffalo Biggins. Riotous Rams have decided to step back from the league, so the Argarthan Mewers will go through to the semi-finals straight away. Tom, this is your bracket. Are you happy with your draw there? Are you happy with your route through to the final? I mean, you avoided some of that sort of Chaos Chosen Norse sort of punchiness in the top half, but I think you've got a couple of tough people there to get through. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. This will be my second game against the Lavender Lynxes. Our first game was a 3-3 draw. It was back to back. It was fast and furious. And this time I'm giving him 190 in petty cash, so I'm definitely not expecting an easy ride on it. And then following straight up, getting through, and if I get through to the semi-finals, I've got either Justin or Harrison. Neither of them are particularly slow in the game, so I'm not liking my chances, to be honest.
John, both the stunty coaches in this bracket no longer have the stunty cup to play for, but they're on either sides of the draw. How likely do you think it is that we see a all stunty final to this playoff bracket? It would be glorious if they got there, but there's a lot to get through to get there.
Well, Justin for sure knows how to pilot those halflings, and I've got his quarterfinal against Harrison as the match I picked out as the one that's probably going to provide the most fireworks with all the mighty blow and high armor on one side, and with the trees and the thrown halflings and the craziness and an expert coach with Justin with loads of experience on the other side. So I could absolutely see Justin progressing through, but with stunty, there's a lot of dice rolls involved, and whenever there's a lot of dice rolls involved, it's so very swingy.
Looking at the next bracket, a lot of very interesting fixtures here. World's Edge Berserkers versus the Plague Brigade. Dwarfs versus Skaven, I feel like is a Blood Bowl classic at this point. Suffolk Suckers versus the Knuffle Dusters, the Raspberry Riptides versus the Jaffa Cakes, Dead Star Belgrave versus Wolverhampton Shamblers. John, what's your kind of standout fixture here? For me, it's probably those Jaffa Cakes and seeing how far they can go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a game that we would love to see up on the stream. The interaction between frenzy players and sidestep en masse could lead to some absolutely crazy positioning. I do remember chasing in a previous life James's Nobblers all around the pitch with a Vargeist for about 4 turns before being able to put the blast thing down. So maybe the Buddha's on the other foot now with the frenzy and the sidestep from the Snotlings being the other way. It should be hilariously entertaining. Lots of injuries. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that match.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy with the fact that he's got over 1 million in gold pieces in petty cash, which is just a ridiculous amount of inducement money.
Yeah, it's a tough one to call there. I think there's going to be some I think we could get some upsets in that group because we've got lots of coaches who are, I'm looking at these fixtures and I'm actually not sure if there's any kind of surefire results there. There's lots of coaches who are on really good runs of form, teams that they've mastered. I feel like that could be one of the tightest ones that we see to see who comes out of there. And looking at the top bracket then, so we have the Atomic Cherry Bombs versus the Orphic Gladiators, Bleeding Clowns versus Chaos Storm, Numpties versus the Bitey Ducks, and the Transvagarian Terrors versus the Gilded Knights of Cerulean. I mean, no easy fixtures there at all. Coaches on varying runs of form, varying performances. Very difficult to call kind of who's going through. Tom, have you got any kind of gut feeling looking at these fixtures? Have you got any kind of, it's so difficult to look at. All of those coaches have had, are there for a reason. I don't know how you kind of clearly separate a lot of those.
No, both these games are going to be absolutely phenomenal. Looking at Scott and Luke's game, that is just ridiculous. The amount of skills and the amount of, you got one super agile team against just a massive wall of muscle, which, it can go either way. Once the dice start rolling, we know that the Atomic Cherry Bombs are very quick and very good. They've got some fantastically good skilled up war dancers, but if they take a pounding, then the tables could easily turn. The same goes with the other game with the Bleeding Clowns against Chaos Storm. Equally, two very impressive coaches. I couldn't predict either of them.
John, there are not many teams in this group of 8 who are going through to this with a full roster of players. A lot of people are missing players sort of somewhere, which probably helps kind of balance things out a bit. Are you feeling confident you're missing less key players possibly than your opponents? So have you got some confidence there?
I'm really happy with the position that I've managed to put the team in. I'd much prefer to have 2 runners on the team because they are so important. But with the 8 casualties out of the last game, versus thanks to a certain Scott and Morg, I'm just happy to have an intact team to go into this one. And yeah, there are lots of people missing, lots of players, stat busts for a couple of us, and it could all affect us at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I'm probably. Am I happy with? I mean, I don't think I was looking forward to anyone in that other side of the draw. I think anyone was going to be a very tough game, and I think I've played Elliot the least out of all of those coaches. We've only had one friendly game ever. We've never played each other in leagues or tournaments. Just that one friendly, which was a great game. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle. I think probably of the teams I could have come up against, Nurgle, I think I've one of the teams I've played against the most through league and tournament and all of that. So hopefully I know what I'm facing. It will just be whether we can get any kind of result from it. That is all of the playoffs. That's all of the games from this week. That is all of the playoffs run through there. We've got 2 weeks now to play the first round of games. Unlike last season where we had to kind of wait for everyone, this season everything is organized nice and separately. So we could see one playoff disappear into the future and one hold back. So we'll see how quickly they move. But if you've got any playoff games to play, obviously check with your opponent, check with the shop, get them booked in. We'll look to bring you, there's some really interesting fixtures there. We'll look to bring you as many of them as we can over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much, Tom, as always. John, thank you so much for coming on this week. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir. So thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thanks very much, guys. It's been great to be here.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. Good luck in all of your playoff games. And yeah, we will see you next week.